So speaking of the application then, Craig, so the first stage is the application form, 4 questions. How can people stand out amongst those 4 questions?
So the questions on the application form, apart from obviously the background information that we want from you, the questions are designed to draw out some of the competencies on the website. So the first thing I always suggest is that somebody goes and checks out the what we're looking for in terms of the competencies, and thankfully you'll already have them on your website so that people can look at them. And then the best piece of advice actually that I can give to anybody is to make sure that you're answering the question as it's asked and all parts of it.
A classic.
It really is, because actually we see it, and people will probably roll their eyes as if they've been told this so many times, but actually we see it so often that somebody tries to highlight some really great experience that they've done, but it's not structured or written in a way that actually answers what we're looking for, and as a result, it can't score well. And then the only other thing I would suggest with answering the questions is draw very broadly from different experiences for different questions, but actually it often works best if you just pick one specific piece of experience per question, and build a real answer around it. So you have a word count to work to, but actually what we find is that the best answers come when people follow writing techniques like the STARE technique, essentially, which is outlining the situation, writing down the task, giving us the action, telling us the result, and then the best answers always give us a point of evaluation, a point of reflection for learning, and they're always relevant to what we're asking. So it's possibly one of the most important things, I think. If I could urge anyone to do anything, it would be to consider the way they're answering the questions, because it's often more about articulating your experience rather than actually there being anything wrong with the experience that you've given. Often people will just fall down in articulating it in such a way that it can't score as well as we would have liked it to.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant advice. And as you said, listeners might be rolling their eyes, but the number of times you see an answer which is, here's my answer, doesn't really matter what the question was. I've written this answer before and I'm just going to cut and paste it in. Yeah, those answers don't get through the first pass of the review. So listeners, make sure you follow Craig's advice there. So we talked offline, Craig, about how you had like 5,500 applications last year for the 150 places. So what proportion of people will fall at this first step of the application form?
It's a really good question, actually. So actually what I would say is that probably in terms of applications, we and because the online tests are packaged up as part of this, so actually what happens is you complete an online test after you've submitted your application, and actually it's if you've passed the online test, your application goes through to shortlisting.
Right.
And essentially to get through that stage and the application, we maybe see around about 1 in 3 make it through that process. But actually what I would say, in case that puts anybody off, is that a number of applications are in a stage where actually they probably shouldn't be considered. There's always a number every year where they're incomplete, or there's they haven't quite drawn well on experience. So if you follow the kind of advice that we've given around articulating an application, there's no reason why at that stage that you shouldn't get through to the next stage of the process.
Yep. And moving on then to the tests. So we mentioned them just then. 3 types of tests: so verbal, situational judgment, and working style. Any advice on answering these?
Yeah, so firstly, I really hope that listeners appreciate that there's no numerical tests in there, because actually it's the one thing that often comes up is there's a fear of a numerical test, although there shouldn't be. There really shouldn't be any sense of worry actually around these tests. My best advice is to relax. In the verbal reasoning test in particular, we're simply asking you to understand some written information and to draw reasoned conclusions from it. It's something that you'll do every day at university, in your work, and probably in many points in your life, irrespective. In the situational judgment test, we're really just testing and assessing how you would proceed as a course of action in any given situation. And actually that's a useful step for you as much as it is for us, because if it's a case that actually you find that quite a challenge, it may just be that the program isn't well suited for you. It might work because it definitely works both ways. But probably my best advice would be, don't be discouraged. These tests are purely to help us determine how likely you are to make the most of the program, and for you to get a feeling for whether it's a good fit for you too. The one thing about online tests is it's frustrating to kind of give any kind of concrete advice for, but I think those tips are probably really useful in terms of how you would approach those online tests more generally.
Just me jumping in here. As Craig mentioned, when you apply to Charityworks, you're going to have to go through all of the psychometric tests. So don't put it off. Check out today's sponsor, who are careergym.com, and start practicing verbal reasoning, situational judgment, and working style tests now. You can practice them under time pressure and exam mode, and they all come with detailed explanations and solutions, and you can track your progress and see how you compare against your peers. What's even better is if you use the code GJP, you're going to get 20% off all of their tests. Head on over to careergym.com, that's careergym.com, and use the code GJP to get 20% off and start practicing today. Now on with the show. Definitely, that's good advice. And listeners, if you want to delve further into the topic of online testing, check out my episode with Ben Williams at graduatejobpodcast.com/test, where we delve into how Ben comes up with the tests and the different things to look for at each stage. I'll recommend that one definitely.